before I start, I know it's like pretty early in the term, so I thought I'd just run through a few bits on format. So what we're going to do is about 20 minutes discussion between me and Ali, and then I'm really keen to get it out to the floor. So as we're talking, maybe have a think about questions. So,
cool.
Ali is a YouTuber, entrepreneur, and alumnus of Emmanuel College, Cambridge. In 2017, during his final year of medical school at Cambridge, he started making YouTube videos about productivity, tech, and study tips. Since then, he's built an online following of more than 4 million people, and in 2021, he quit his career as an NHS doctor, much to the dismay of his mother.
Yes.
He now runs a multi-million-pound content creation business, hosts a weekly podcast interviewing inspiring people, and continues to make videos for YouTube and other social media. And he's currently writing a book themed around meaningfulness and sustainability. Sorry, sustainable productivity.
That's the one, yeah.
That's the one. I actually wanted to start with that.
Yeah.
So when I was trying to market this event, I was saying to Ali, okay, can we do how to get first at Cambridge, how to nail tripos?
Yeah,
and you
I wasn't
said,
a fan of those.
And you said, I don't want to do that. You said, let's call it sustainable productivity. So what does that mean to you, and why is it different?
I mean, the reason I didn't want to call it like ranking first in medicine tripos is because I didn't do that. And it was a clickbait video title that has come back to bite me so often. But no, I think sustainable productivity is like my jam. As I was making the YouTube videos and have been for the last 5 years, the question that everyone always asks is like, oh, how are you so productive? And I always felt like a weird question because it never really felt like I was doing something special. I was just like kind of having fun and doing stuff. And that seemed to look impressive to people. And so then when Penguin approached me 2 years ago, it was like, hey, do you want to write a book about productivity? And if we did a whole like deep dive into what does productivity mean and like how do we actually be productive? And this idea of it sort of being sustainable and meaningful was like one of the core themes that came out when I was doing the research and that I realized in my own life. And so now I'm trying to be the poster boy for like sustainable productivity rather than the non-sustainable kind.
Do you need to be sustainable at university with your productivity? So, for example, could I be really unsustainable, could probably only pursue it for maybe 2 months, and then, I've got a summer. Do you think you need to, what's the importance of it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you don't really have to. I guess part of it depends on how you want to define productivity. So the way that I define productivity is using our time well and using our time intentionally. And so for me, the way that I was sustainably productive at uni was by falling behind on all the lectures and then just catching up in the holidays. Because those 8-week terms are really short, and the point of university is to like hang out with friends rather than to work. And the point of the holidays is like when there's nothing else to do is to work, in my book. So it doesn't necessarily have to be sustainable, but like it's kind of nice if it is.
Okay. So can we go back to your first ever YouTube video?
Yes.
So when you decided in your 3rd year?
Sort of. So I'd been wanting to be a YouTuber since like 2008, and I wanted to be like a music YouTuber. I was like, if anyone watches Kurt Schneider and Sam Tsui and Boyce Avenue, these like cover bands on YouTube, they do like sick covers of like popular songs. And so I had a few friends who could sing, and I was like, I really want to learn how to play loads of different musical instruments so I can accompany them while they sing songs. And so I kind of tried making YouTube videos like in 2nd year and 3rd year and 4th year, like with friends singing covers of like James Bay and like Disney and stuff. And none of that really worked. But then in my 5th year, when I was on my elective in Cambodia, elective is a thing that we do in medicine where you kind of get to go somewhere in a different country and practice medicine for a few weeks. That was when I was like, I'm going to start a travel vlog. And then I started a travel vlog, and that morphed into kind of the life of a doctor, life of a medical student type videos.
Okay. And so at what point did you think, okay, I want to make this mainly about, study, entrepreneurship came a bit later, but at what point do you go, okay, the music isn't maybe working out as I hope?
So when the music career failed, that was where, so actually there was one YouTuber in particular. So before I started, I thought that to be a YouTuber, you had to have a very big personality. Because like Ibs Mo, if anyone's familiar with Ibs Mo, was like blowing up at the time, and he's very charismatic. And he's like so entertaining on camera. And I was looking at him, I was like, there's no way I could ever be that entertaining. And then I found this other YouTuber called Simon Clark. Anyone know any Simon Clark? He was like the OG Oxford nerd physics PhD vlogger back in the day. And he was vlogging his life as a freaking massive nerd about himself going to the choir and like talking through his physics formulas. And I was like, that's awesome. And he had like 100,000 subscribers. And I realized that if Simon Clark can be a nerd on camera and it does well, then maybe I could be a nerd on camera as well. And maybe it wouldn't do as well, but like, at least there's a market for that sort of thing. And so that's when I realized that my vibe is less of an entertainment and musical personality and more of a, here's how you study for your exams. And that seemed to do well.
What was the video that really kicked it off, where it kind of went from something you do with your degree to when you go, actually, do you know what, this could be something?
Yeah, so there were a few. Like, I think the first one that really helped to take things off was actually a collab with Ibsmo. This was when I had like 4,000 subscribers and he had like 60,000, and he very graciously invited me over to his college. He was at Wolfson, and we just sort of shot a collab video, and then suddenly my channel started to get momentum. And then a few weeks later, I put out this one about how to study for exams, like evidence-based study techniques. And this was a video that I had in the back of my mind, like 9 months earlier when I started YouTube. It's like, okay, this is going to be my magnum opus. This is going to be the video that needs to be good. But I knew that to make that video good, I needed to make like loads of really shitty videos. Sorry, I don't know. I needed to make loads of really bad videos because I didn't know anything about like talking to a camera or editing or any of that stuff. So this was like my 80th video or something, and that is the video that ended up going viral that really helped the channel take off. Partly thanks to Ibs's boost, and also partly thanks to the fact that I'd made like 80 crappy videos before then, so that I then knew how to make a hopefully decent video.
How do you feel when you look back at those incredibly successful, on your YouTube, you've got Welcome to My Page.
Yes.
And so the ones that really blew up,
Yeah.
have you changed your mind about any of them since? So do you look back and think, God, now I'm writing a book actually.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's the best way to study, or is there anything that you'd,
I mean, the main thing I think about is like, whoa, I look really weird without a beard. And whoa, I had so much more hair back then. Now I think like, if I'm being honest, when you do YouTube videos every week for 5 years, you start to run out of content, and you start to have to scrape the bottom of the barrel for like, I need some kind of new productivity system that I can tell people about this week. And so some of those I've looked back on and thought, that was a bit dodgy. Like, I'm not sure I fully agree with that, but like, I needed a video to come out to satisfy the sponsor, and then that like led to me publishing like a few videos here and there that I haven't fully been proud of. But I also think like changing your mind over time is a sign of growth rather than a sign of something bad happening.
Is there a danger that people latch on to the next productive fix? Almost like, I think, we were talking upstairs about productivity. You really the first almost in that wave.
Yeah.
And now it's really saturated and you're at the top. I think, is there a danger in telling people, once you have the basics of productivity, is there a danger of going beyond that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Also, I don't think I was anywhere near the first. Like the world of productivity has been like a thing since about 2007 when the 4-Hour Workweek came out, and then the blog Lifehacker that was super popular, and then loads of people had started YouTube channels around it. And I guess mine wasn't really supposed to be productivity. It was meant to be, here's how you get into med school, here's what life of a doctor is like. But then it turned out that the things people were asking about in the comments were like, either bro, do you pray 5 times a day, or bro, how are you so productive? Those were like the two main questions. I think there was a danger. I think, like, to be honest, this is one of the challenges of being a productivity YouTuber. Of like, really what happens is that someone like latches onto the content and then they watch a lot of it, and then either they're watching it purely to procrastinate from the thing that they're supposed to be doing, or they're doing that and they actually learn some tips. But then as soon as they've learned enough tips, they stop watching your videos because now they don't need them anymore. Then it's like, oh crap, now I have a subscriber who's not a viewer and it's bad for the algorithm, so you have to keep on trying to attract more and more of an audience. But I think I've just grown okay with that over the years. And I just fully recognize that like the person who watched me when I was in like 2017 is very unlikely to be the person who continues to watch me when I'm 5 years later.
Okay. Is it ever, it's a bit of a personal question, I guess. Is it ever tough where you have the image of you in the public as the productivity guy?
Yeah.
Right? And everyone has bad days, and where you think, God, I'm not actually being very productive at the moment. Is that a difficult kind of balance to strike, or do you ever find yourself checking yourself?
It's actually not. Like I was worried about this at the start, like, oh, I'm the productivity guy, every day needs to be productive. But then I made a vlog, I think, called An Unproductive Day in My Life, and that did even better. Like, people were like, oh my God, you're being so authentic and raw, and like, you're a waste man as well. And I was like, yeah, nice. So it's like, when I'm having a productive day, it's impressive, and when I'm having an unproductive day, it's authentic. So it's like win-win. So if anyone wants to be a YouTuber, like, would recommend that approach.
Okay, so I'm now going to move on to the nitty-gritty of the productivity part.
Nice.
So we're in exam season. What would you say is the best way to kind of block your time? Say you wake up at 8, or when would you wake up? And your full day of work.
Yeah.
how do you start your day thinking, okay, I'm going to plan this out, and how do you plan it? And then also, how do you time block?
Yes. Okay, so if I think back to the exam terms when I did well, rather than the exam terms when I did badly, I was waking up consistently, 8 o'clock. You know, the whole thing about having a consistent wake-up time, that's like legit, and there's loads of evidence behind it, and it works. Then I'd go to hall to grab some breakfast, then I'd go to the library, and I'd be in the library with like various friends of mine who were doing different subjects. And I think the key to making exam term fun is to study with your friends, but like not study with your friends like you're doing the same thing, because then that's really unproductive and you end up just chatting. But to study with friends who are doing different subjects or in different colleges or just hanging out in like different libraries. And so we would use the Pomodoro technique together, where we'd all like, we'd tap once on the table for like the start of the 25-minute segment, and then twice for like the 5-minute break, and then twice for like the new start. And that was just like a really nice way to kind of keep the flow going. And so the first thing I do is plan out like, what am I doing today? I'd basically ask myself the question of, if the exam were tomorrow, what would I be crapping myself about? And then I would study that one. And then every day it would just be a repetition of this thing of like, okay, what is the thing I'm least happy with? And let me try and do that. And then I had this whole like timetable thing that I made a video about, but it was basically just working with friends, Pomodoro technique, and setting the intention first thing in the morning, rather than trying to theoretically plan out this hypothetical revision timetable 8 weeks in advance.
Okay, sure. How do you then switch off at the end of when do you know when it's time to stop?
I mean, in exam term, it's time to stop when it's like, 8 p.m., right? Or like after dinner time. It just depends on like how much you want to do the thing. Some days it was like, I don't know, 2, 3 p.m. I was like, okay, I'm not feeling it today. That's fine. It's all good. The point of life is to enjoy it rather than to get good grades. So, I would fairly constantly tell myself that.
And when you hit that wall of procrastination, that fated word, what's the best thing that you found to overcome it?
So the thing with procrastination is that it is a word that has a lot of baggage associated with it. And it's not like, basically there's real procrastination and there's fake procrastination, right? The fake procrastination is the sort where it's actually just subconscious prioritization. So let's say, I know a lot of people who are like, oh, I really want to start a YouTube channel, but I've been procrastinating from it. And it's like, do you actually want to do it? Like, is this actually a priority in your life? Like, we all have the same 24 hours. It's obviously all BS. Don't cancel me. Oh, it's obviously all BS. Like, depending on like what your life setup looks like, you sometimes might actually physically not have the time to start a YouTube channel or start a podcast or like work out consistently or whatever. And if that's the case, then that's totally fine. But I think people think that they're procrastinating from something when actually they're just prioritizing their energy well because there are better things to do. I think procrastination becomes a problem when it's real procrastination, when it's like, I know I want to do this thing, and I know that it's a big priority in my life, but I'm still not doing the thing. So what's going on there? And then we can kind of break it down. Basically, I think procrastination is a problem with getting started. It's like, Newton's law of inertia. Like once an object is moving, then it'll continue moving, but an object at rest will continue to stay at rest unless acted on by an external imbalanced force, blah, blah, blah. So really, the way to solve procrastination is to just try and start the thing and do whatever it takes to just start the thing. And so what I would tell myself when I was procrastinating from stuff is I'm just going to do it for 2 minutes. If I would struggle to wake up in the morning, I remember in third year exam term I did this. I set my alarm on my laptop connected to the speakers across the room from me. So at 8 o'clock in the morning, it would start blaring out, and I'd be like, oh my God, I need to get out of bed to switch this goddamn thing off, otherwise my neighbors are going to get annoyed. Yeah, and so it was like that sort of social pressure of not wanting to piss off my neighbors was the thing that got me out of bed, and it's the thing that got me started with my day. So I think really procrastination is a problem with getting started. Just get started, and then life becomes easier.
Okay. I think before we go to audience questions, what I really want to ask you is your decision to stop being a doctor.
Yeah.
So can you talk me through that?
Yes. Basically, medicine is fun, but for me, being an entrepreneur and running my own thing was more fun. And medicine makes money, but being an entrepreneur and running your own thing makes more money. And medicine helps people, but if you take a utilitarian approach to it and donate 10% of your income every year to the Against Malaria Foundation, effective altruism, et cetera, then actually being an entrepreneur and doing your own thing has more impact in a utilitarian sense. So it was like, if running my own thing is more fun, and it makes loads more money, and it arguably helps more people, then why am I still doing medicine? And it was sort of like, I think I was holding on to an identity, holding on to a decision that I made at the age of 14, which was when you have to make a decision with work experience and all that shit. Holding on to that kind of decision, and holding on to what's my mum going to think? What's my family going to think? Holding on to like but like, am I just going to be a YouTuber? That sounds a bit naff. Like doctor and YouTuber is cool, but like YouTuber is just a bit crap. All of those like worries about what other people would think of me were the thing that was keeping me tied to this identity of being a doctor. And I think I was being interviewed on another podcast called The School of Greatness, very American-sounding name, where the guy, Lewis, the host, challenged me on this and really sort of talked me through exactly why I was struggling with this decision. And we realized that like he was like, hang on, you're holding on to this thing of being a doctor because you think that like the identity of being a doctor is more important than you living your own truth. And I was like, damn, you're right. And I realized I was holding on to the identity, the status, the prestige, what other people would think of me for way too long. And then it was a fairly easy decision to leave and decide to explore this YouTube thing more full time. With the caveat that like the nice thing about medicine is you can always go back to it if you're really desperate. So
do you think you will go back to it?
I think it's very unlikely. I think, if I needed to, like the only circumstance I can see myself really wanting to go back to it is if I lose, like everything crumbles around me, I get canceled, the YouTube channel dies to zero, business falls to zero, all the investments fall to zero, and then I need a job that pays 30K a year. But if I needed a job that pays 30K a year with the skills that I've gotten as like a YouTuber or something, there are 5,000 million jobs that pay more than 30K a year. Working as a junior doctor would be very low on my priority list if that was what I needed to do. But I reserve the right to change my mind if more data comes to the front.
Are you worried you're going to get cancelled?
Yeah.
Yeah?
It's like, if I think of what are the risks to the business that I've got, getting cancelled is actually fairly high on the list. Getting hit by a bus is another one, but that's why I avoid crossing the road when it's a red light. Whereas the getting cancelled thing is like a thing that's on everyone's minds who's like a reasonably sized kind of YouTuber.
But with YouTube, do you have, I assume that, you've got a team of, we were saying upstairs, about 18, 20 people.
Yeah.
So when you post a YouTube video, and it's gone through a number of edits,
Yep.
Do you think it's likely that you get cancelled on your YouTube, or do you think it would just be something silly?
I think it'll be something like this, yeah.
Gotta be careful.
Yeah. No, I think with the videos, it's super easy because like we can always like massage things in the cut. But when people have gotten cancelled, it's been because tweets have resurfaced from like 2006 or whenever they were an idiot in school, or because you get like a Molly May situation where she said like something in the context of like a 2-hour-long interview, the thing gets sort of taken out of context and posted on TikTok, but then sort of not really, and then like the whole like rumor mill starts to spin. There's like that kind of stuff happens when you don't have control of the final edit. So it's something that we think about, but I kind of semi-jokingly talk about it because it's just kind of funny.
So last question before we go out to the floor. So where do you, I don't want to sound cheesy here.
It's all good.
Where do you see yourself and the company
Yep.
in 5 years? Like, what's your absolute dream scenario?
So I think the way I think of it is like, what is the infinite game that I want to play? Like, if I won the lottery, what would I actually want to do with my time? And if I think about that, and I think, there's a few different ways to think about it. One strategy I found really helpful it's called the Gravestone Technique, where you think about like, what do I want written on my gravestone when I'm dead, hopefully. And for me, it's like some combination of like good father, good husband, and inspirational teacher. I was like, okay, that's interesting, inspirational teacher, maybe this is the thing that I want to do. There's another exercise that I found helpful called the Ideal Ordinary Week, which is like you fast forward in your Google Calendar 5 years, and you just, hopefully there's nothing in it at that point, and you like block out what you would want your ideal calendar to look like once you've gotten rid of all those recurring events that like span forever. And what I realized that like what my ideal ordinary week looks like is maybe spending 1 day a week working with the team and like looking at research papers and like psychology and sociology and medicine and stuff and learning more about like this thing of helping people live their best lives. 1 day a week doing that. 1 day a week maybe like filming a video, and 1 day a week like interviewing people on a podcast, and the rest of the time to chill. And that's basically what I do now. And so my goal for the business is to just be able to continue doing this thing and to continue living a life where I can kind of make money, have fun, and help people in that order. And as long as those boxes are ticked, then I'm very happy. Okay. And we work with a business coach, and he's always like, yeah, put some numbers on it. Like, what's your big, hairy, audacious goal? Like, what's your 10-year plan? How many people do you want to reach? He's not actually American. I don't know why I tried to. But like, I've always been very anti-numbers and anti-goals in that sense. I think the goal is more like, how can I live a life that is the life I want to be living every day, rather than how can I reach an arbitrary milestone of like revenue or subscribers or views or whatever. So I think that's the aim.
Okay.
What's the infinite game and how can I continue playing it?
Perfect. I think we're ready to go up to the floor. So if you just raise your hand if you've got a question, and we'll get a, thank you very much, get a mic to you.
Hi, Ali. I'm a huge fan.
Hey.
Could you just talk more about like, I guess like unproductivity? Because you know, like everyone here at Cambridge, like massive overachievers, right?
Yeah.
And kind of, I know, like, could you talk about more, like if you ever confronted like feelings of inadequacy and like the inability to justify like every hour of your day and the way that you're spending it, and sort of how that, and sort of how you've confronted that, how you've overcome it, maybe, just that really. Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's ultimately about like, it comes back to the goals thing. I think it always comes back to the goals thing. It's like, if you have a goal of achieving a certain outcome, then in a way, like, I'll speak for myself rather than for others. Like when I have a goal of hitting a certain outcome, like I want to get a first in the exams, I want my book to hit the New York Times bestseller list, or whatever kind of outcome goal that's kind of fairly outside of my control, it really sucks the joy out of life, because it's like, I don't have control over this thing. And the things that I'm trying to do to get there, I feel are not great, because it's like there's this thing that's like looming over me, which is like this goal that I have no control over. Whereas when I change my goals to being more input goals, so instead of write a book that hits the New York Times list, write a book that I'm proud of. Now, to me, that goal is like, oh, this is something I can do. I can write a book I'm proud of. And writing a book I'm proud of doesn't mean I need to justify every hour of my day. It just means I need to spend some amount of time working on the book, hopefully enjoy the process, and hopefully it ends up being a book I'm proud of. Similarly, when I started the YouTube channel, it was never a case of, I need to hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. It was a case of, I'm just going to try and make 1 or 2 videos every week, and I'm going to try and slowly make them better over time, which is a thing that's 100% within my control. So again, I don't then need to justify every hour of my day, because the goal is very modest. And so I think that there's this whole industry around like motivational speakers and gurus and stuff that encourages you to set these big goals and like work hard to achieve your goals and all that crap. But I actually think like setting smaller, more manageable goals that are like within your control, that is how I found to be like the ultimate hack that helps me move away from productivity as like needing to justify every hour of my time towards, yeah, I've got these things, they're kind of fun to do, I'm spending my time in the way that I want. And as long as like, the general domains of life, of like health, wealth, love, and happiness are like broadly taken care of, then it's all good and I don't need to overthink it. And I think very much like when I was at university, probably in first year, was when I really had like the whole extrinsic motivation approach to life of like, oh crap, I was really good in school and now I'm at uni and now I suck compared to everyone else. I need to work really hard. Thankfully, I got over that by the end of first year, and then second year on was like super chill, because I decided I was going to play my own game rather than try and race against other people.
Thank you for the talk. Could you just talk a bit more about how technology played a role in helping you be more productive? So whether you use certain apps or services and how that's improved your productivity.
Yes. Okay. Technology for the sake of productivity. So as a sort of productivity / wannabe tech YouTuber, I'm very much incentivized to always try out new apps and try and figure out what's that next best thing. What's the new note-taking app that's really going to move the needle? Over time, what I've realized is that simple is best. And so now I don't really use fancy note-taking apps. I use freaking Apple Notes to record stuff. And I've written chunks of my book just in Apple Notes rather than in any like Scrivener or Ulysses or Bear or like a zillion other like writing themed apps. The way I think of it now is like the whole point of tech is to support my life, and if there is like a thing that I want to do that I can figure out a system for so that I don't need to think about it myself, then the tech is really useful. For example, I know I want to call my grandma every other day, but I know I will fail to remember to call my grandma every other day because my memory sucks. So if I can use Todoist and make an every other day reminder to call Nani, that means it pops up on my phone. I'm like, oh yeah, I should call my grandma. That's, I find, a useful way of like sort of enabling the things that I want in my life, i.e. to keep in touch with my grandma, thanks to technology. But I've always found whenever I've gone deep into the rabbit hole of like a fancy super niche app, I've always just like enjoyed the nerdiness of the rabbit hole, but never actually it's never actually contributed to the things that I care about, which is health, wealth, love, and happiness. So broadly, keeping it simple and like building automated systems for the things that I want to do anyway, like keep in touch with my grandma or keep in touch with friends.
Okay, thank you for the talk.
So I think my question sort of follows on very well from the last question, which is what to do about technology that is, in some sense, a barrier to productivity. So social media, which is, designed to be addictive. How should we, people who want to maximize their productivity, approach things like social media? Should we just, go and delete our Instagram or Twitter or whatever for exam season so we can be productive? Or should we, I don't know, I think there's features where you can set timers on social media. How should we try to manage social media so that,
Yeah, I know what you mean. So I don't know. The way I approach this is I think different. So the standard advice here is like delete the apps, set timers in place, use freedom, and these other things that block the apps. Increase the friction to make sure you log off out of Instagram, so then it's a bit more of a faff to log in, etc., etc. And all of those things are all well and good, but they're all like little hacks here and there. The thing that and I don't know if this applies to everyone, but I think what you want to get to is a point where the thing you're doing is actually more fun than picking up Instagram and scrolling on Twitter would be. And so, for example, if I'm, trying to do my book, or if I'm trying to study for my exams, and I'm doing it with friends, and we have the Lord of the Rings soundtrack in the background, and we're using the Pomodoro technique together. The fact that I'm working on a thing that I like and have tried to make a bit more fun, make it into a game, means that my phone is just right next to me. It's face down, so I don't see the notifications, because that would be bad. Like the phone's face down, but I really feel no compulsion to pick up my phone and go on Instagram, because I've created systems in my life that make the thing I'm trying to do actually more fun than picking up Instagram would be. And I think if you can cultivate an attitude of like that, then you don't need fancy apps, you don't need to delete your social media accounts. But if you're trying to like white knuckle it and like grit your way through something you absolutely freaking hate, and you've not been able to find a way or haven't tried to find a way to make it more enjoyable for yourself, at that point, then all these different tactics of like throwing your phone away or locking your phone away or buying a little safe that locks your phone for 25 minutes, all of those strategies then come in handy. And I think step number one is to make the alternatives more enjoyable than the social media itself, I think.
Thank you for your talk. Big fan, so it's great to see you.
Oh, thank you.
Talking to a lot of my friends, I think we have ideas about businesses that we want to start, but as students, we don't really have a network and we don't really have funding to start it, for example. So what is your advice for like next steps on that?
Advice for starting a business. So most businesses to start off with don't need funding, and most businesses that students can reasonably start while you're a Cambridge student and you have other things to do are the sorts of businesses that probably shouldn't need funding. My whole thing with businesses is like bootstrapping is the way forward, i.e. trying to build a business without funding, trying to be profitable fairly early on, and kind of just going for it in the evenings and weekends. Obviously, you're at university, you have other things to do, so I think the first question to ask is, do you want to make this a priority in your life? Because it takes a lot of work to start a business, to get it off the ground. If you can enjoy the work, and if it's really fun, then that's awesome, because now you're ticking the I'm having fun box as well as the box of I'm trying to build a business. But yeah, broadly, evenings and weekends. Holidays are great. We have like really long holidays, so there's loads of time to do stuff. But I would say broadly, avoid businesses that require a network or funding. There are so many other business ideas that don't need any of those things. And when you're making money, even if it's a small amount of money, like I remember the first time my courses business made money, it was an incredible feeling because I was at university and I was making a few £100 a week off of this business. When the YouTube channel started making money, I was still at university, but I was like, bloody hell, I made £5 a day from YouTube ads. I could get a takeaway every day for the rest of my life. It's like stuff like that, where that I think really sustains the fire of motivation to keep the ideas going. And then once you've got a job and stuff and you quit the job, at that point you can do all the funding, VC, et cetera, but it's really hard to do as a student.
So just out of general interest, like from the projects you have done, which one's like been the most rewarding? And like, is there any aspects specifically which have been like the most rewarding part?
Nice. Yeah, so the two things that come to mind. Number one, most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life is the YouTube channel, just because the skills that I've learned, the fun I've had along the way, the friends I've made along the way. One of the best things about being a YouTuber, other than like the obvious things, is actually the fact you get to make friends with other YouTubers, and it's like really cool. And the fact that people come up to me in the streets and they're like, oh my God, I watched your videos, or I bought an iPad because of you, or I started using Notion because of you. And that, there's something about that feels really nice. And the second most rewarding thing I've ever done was take part in the Adam Brooks Hospital pantomime, which was like a musical pantomime production that the clinical school puts on every year. And I often wonder, like, that was one of the happiest times of my life when I was in this production. And I think the thing that made it so good was like working with other people towards this thing that we were all, this thing that was bigger than us. We were all trying to put on this show, and everyone that I was working with was like super talented at the things that they were doing. And this is the structure I've tried to create around my own business as well, that how can I work with people who I like, who are really talented at the things that they're doing, where we're working towards something bigger, like it doesn't have to be huge, but just like something bigger than us. And I think that is profoundly satisfying. And then the third most happy thing I've ever done is get addicted to World of Warcraft for 3.5 years in my youth.
Hi, Ali. It's nice to meet you. I saw you at the train station a few months ago, but I don't expect you to remember. Leading on from all the other tech questions, what would you say your top Mac, like Apple ecosystem tip is? So your top Apple ecosystem tip is?
Top Apple ecosystem tip. Being able to answer texts and WhatsApp from your laptop is just like freaking game-changing. WhatsApp web, iMessage is so good. Like, who's got time to type on the phone on the toilet? Where you can just get on your laptop in the toilet and like type the messages at the same time. That's my number one tip.
Hi, I did get an iPad because of you.
Oh.
But I was wondering, of the 4 aspects like health, wealth, love, and happiness, what area of your life do you feel like you're lacking the most in right now, and how are you working to lack less in it?
Oh, interesting. Health, wealth, love, and happiness. I think the one that I'm currently weaker on is health. And so what I'm trying to do is get better at cooking healthier meals, to make that more likely. I've actually been working with this like accountability coach, who's this guy from America. It's always American. This guy from America called James, who like calls me once a week, and he's like, all right, after a bit of chit chat, he's like, how's life going? What's been going on this week? He asks me, all right, what are your top 3 priorities for the week? And I'm like, oh shit, I hadn't actually thought of that. And I'm like, all right, James, right, I'm gonna cook something tomorrow night. And he's like, all right, put it in the calendar. And I'm like, oh God, okay, fine, I'll put it in the calendar. And then I end up putting it in the calendar, and I end up cooking something tomorrow night. So it's great. Like, this chap James has been holding me accountable. The weird thing about that is you don't need to pay 400 quid a month for this service. You can just do it yourself or with friends, but like no one does it. And so the fact that I pay for this guy to call me up once a week and set my priorities has been really helpful. So we're trying to cook more often. I've set a rule for myself. One thing I like to do is like set default rules. So it's like I don't have to think about the thing. And the default rule I've set for myself is when friends come over to my place, we're not allowed to order takeaway. And that rule makes me cook about 10 times more than I normally would, which helps me cook. And Gordon, my videographer, who's like around somewhere, who's also my gym buddy, we're trying to do this little project. Oh, there he is. We're trying to do a little project where we try and get me on the cover of Men's Health magazine at some point in the next year. And to do that, you've got to be pretty hench. And because Gordon used to be a professional bodybuilder and a personal trainer, he's been motivating me to, we had a workout this morning at 7:30. So it's like these various things on the cooking and the workout front where I'm working towards this kind of joke goal of this Men's Health magazine / becoming a Gymshark athlete, but at the same time trying to kind of build systems or like get other people involved in a way that can help me along that path.
So I also got an iPad after watching one of your videos. And then I watched another one. I watched another video and then bought another iPad after that.
Oh, wow.
So
you got loads of money to burn. Love it.
I mean, do you think there's ever like a risk of becoming obsessed with, the method of being more productive? Or for example, your video on typing speed. Like, I watched it during the 2020 lockdown, and like that was the only thing I do. And I got better at typing, but in terms of writing, I'm not sure if I got better at writing. So do you think there's ever a risk of becoming obsessed with productive methods?
Oh yeah. I mean, the thing is, I think for any skill in life, if you try and make the skill more than the thing that the skill is actually worth it for, that's like potentially bad. So it's like if I'm training my typing speed, I'm not really thinking that like being able to type at 180 words per minute rather than 160 words per minute is actually going to make me a better writer. I'm just doing it because it's kind of fun. And it's like, the world record is like 210, so can I get to the world record? That kind of stuff. Similarly, I don't know, if for example, I am trying to be more productive in the way that I work out, I am trying not to think about the fact that, this link between, if I have a better body, it makes me worth more as a human being, or something like that. But if I did, then there would be a danger of like going too far on the health front. And if you speak to personal trainers and stuff, there's all these stories of people who go too hard on the bodybuilding, on the gym front, because they're trying to get more out of it than the thing itself. So I think that's where the danger comes in. But as long as you're being fairly balanced with it, and recognizing that maybe buying a second or third iPad won't necessarily help me write my book, and maybe it's just a bit of a waste of time, then we're good. But it's all good that you have 2 iPads. So love it.
Thanks for coming. I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts, or if you've heard of the book 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman.
Love it.
You've read it, yeah. So I don't know if anyone who hasn't read it, he kind of argues that like you're never going to have enough time to accomplish like everything you want, because we live on average 4,000 weeks, and so therefore you should feel that like as a liberating thing, and therefore like the limited decisions you make, you will end up being happier with them. So kind of like, I guess, against the productivity wave maybe. But yeah, I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on it.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's a fantastic book, 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman. I've got an interview with him on my podcast if anyone wants to check it out. Nice guy. Yeah, I think it's very liberating. I'm all about like embracing mediocrity and just like, not doing stuff that you don't want to do. One thing that book changed for me is like, I used to feel bad about the stuff that I'm really bad at replying to WhatsApps. Because, when, if I'm self-aggrandizing myself, I like to think, I'm kind of a big deal. I have lots of people wanting to, get my time and attention. And I end up with these like ridiculously large numbers of emails, Twitter DMs, and WhatsApp messages. And after reading 4,000 Weeks, I just realized I'm just going to embrace the fact that I suck at responding to WhatsApp messages. The only people I actually respond to are my girlfriend and my family, who I have pinned as WhatsApp thingies. But everyone else can go into the little category of like, I'll get back to you at some point. And there's something very nice, something very like liberating about embracing the fact that I'm just bad at replying to messages and not choosing to beat myself up over this. And I think this metaphor extends to everything else in life. It comes back to that thing about like real versus fake procrastination, of like we physically don't have enough hours in the day or enough time in our lives to do all of the things we want to do. I know I want to become sick at dancing, I want to be really good at cooking, I want to be a really good guitarist, I want to learn piano, I want to learn music theory, I want to do sight reading, I want to play by ear. There's no way in hell I'm actually going to be able to do all that stuff to a reasonable level. So what are the things I actually care about? And what are the things I can just embrace being just really mediocre at? I know I'm always going to be a mediocre guitarist and singer and pianist, but that's totally fine. I'm not trying to go for world class in any of these domains. So I think Oliver Burkeman's approach to productivity is very refreshing, and yeah, just lowering the bar, setting smaller goals, and embracing mediocrity, I think is the way.
I'm going to free will this question because I hadn't actually quite thought it through in my brain. I'm really big into productivity, but I've never heard of yourself. I'm into bullet journaling, so really keen to spread the message. But if you're in charge of a team, trying to do work which is difficult, it's hard, and not particularly enjoyable, and you're into productivity yourself, how do you persuade people to get on board? How do you make that team more productive?
How do I make the team more productive? I don't really think about trying to make the team more productive. I think, okay, so over the last few years of kind of growing the team, I think we've tried loads of different techniques for like OKRs and goal setting and all that jazz. The only thing that has worked is, it's going to sound super basic like all business advice does, like in abstract, is like figuring out what is the actual goal that we care about, rather than what are the fake goals along the way. So for example, we have 4 writers on the team. And it's like very easy to be like, okay, do we track their productivity in terms of like words produced per day or like pages produced or like this or that? And really like the reason we've hired the writers is to write, decent blog posts or video scripts. And I'm just thinking if a writer can produce like 1 or 2 decent scripts a month, that's actually pretty good. They pay for their salary at that point. So that's like the number that we're then looking at. And just having that as a number and just forgetting about all of the other different, 100 different ways of tracking someone's productivity has been really helpful in increasing their productivity. But I find that generally, and every business book talks about this, so it's quite cliche, but like setting a clear direction and then getting out of their way, and then just trusting that you've hired the right people, that you don't need to, quote, make them more productive, is pretty ideal. It's also pretty ideal because everyone who works with me has watched my stuff for a while, and so they know the productivity advice. But I'm afraid I don't really have anything to offer beyond that, beyond the basic cliches. But I think they're a cliche for a reason.
Eid Mubarak.
Thanks, you too.
I just wanted to ask, your podcast is obviously doing really well. You've had some really interesting guests on. Who's been your favourite so far, and who do you want to interview on your podcast?
So favourite guest, I think, has been Logan Ury, who wrote a book called How to Not Die Alone, book I would recommend for a lot of people here. This is not a slur against the audience of the Cambridge Union, just a book that I recommend to everyone across the board. It's quite funny sometimes, I feel like, I'd say to a friend of mine, oh, Rachel, this is a really good book that you should read. It's called How to Not Die Alone. And then she'd get offended by that. But anyway, Logan Ury wrote this book, and so we had this 4-hour-long conversation about like how to date more productively and how to be more systematic with our love lives, which is right up my street. Absolute dream guest would be either Alain de Botton, the philosopher, or Darren Brown, the magician / illusionist / general badass. Those are my 2 dream guests.
We had him here last time.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
No, first time.
First term. Damn, I need to, read those emails.
You're a member, right?
I'm a member. I should have come.
You should have
Bloody
come.
hell. Have you still got his email address? I've been trying to get in touch with him.
Oh, I can't tell you.
Nice. Yeah.
I would love to get you on my podcast. I have an entrepreneurship podcast.
Cool.
Shoot my shot.
Perfect. Let's do it.
There we go.
Wonderful. Can you email dan@aliabdaal.com and ask him to make it happen, please? Thank you.
So I've been trying to write a blog for a while now, very much inspired by you. And I feel like I've had a lot of things that I've struggled with, like building up to it. And one of the things is like I'd come up with a really good idea, like at the most inconvenient times, like halfway through an essay or something, and I'll write it down. And I'm like stuck with a long list of ideas, which I was passionate about like 2 weeks ago. And then I think, okay, I need to get on it and write it, because if I don't, I'm not going to start. But it takes me so long because I'm still quite new to it.
Yep.
And so then I'm like, okay, when am I going to actually have the time to actually spend the amount of hours that it will take me? So I was wondering if you had a similar experience, or if you have any tips on someone who's still at my stage, like trying to make it a more consistent habit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
No, that's right. So I have this problem with my YouTube channel and had it from day one of like having 5,000 ideas and thing, and then actually being like, oh, this was such a good idea 3 weeks ago, but like I can't be asked to do it right now. The solution I found to this problem is to not, and I think this applies to any, work across the board, but especially stuff like a blog or a YouTube channel, is not actually try and do things one at a time. It's actually just sort of do things into almost like parallel processing, or like having multiple stoves on the stove, having multiple pots on the stove, but they're all like slow burning. They're all like slowly simmering away. And so I remember when I was working during COVID, actually, there was, it was fairly quiet on the obstetrics and gynecology ward. And so when I would have time in between patients, I would just open up Notion or whatever app I was using at the time and just sort of write a few bullet points for one of my videos. And then a patient would come in and be like, talk to them, smile, et cetera. And then as soon as they'd leave, all right, cool, and then write a few bullet points for another one. And then like over time, over the course of a few weeks, I actually fleshed out like 20 different videos. And then one day where I had like 2 days off in a row, I filmed like 10 of them in one sitting. Like across the 2 days, just changing my t-shirt every time, so it looked a bit different. But I think that strategy of like when you're busy and you have stuff to do, just like adding the little sprinkles to the stuff on the slow burner, and then it just takes a day where you're like, all right, I've got like 20 blog posts at like 80% completion. I just need to sit down and bash through it for the next like 3 hours, and then you get them out the door. The other thing to do is you can just publish things at 80% completion. Basically, I've never published a video that I've been fully 100% proud of, but I think that's why I've been able to publish videos. Whereas if I ever tried to get to 100% perfection in anything, it just would never end up happening. So bullet point, slow burn over time, get it to 80%, publish it. When you're small and no one's looking at your stuff, no one cares anyway, so the bar is very low. And then over time, you just get better at this whole process.
Hi, Ali. So success on YouTube follows a Pareto distribution or some similar form. A lot of people talk about like what separates the people like yourself that make it into the millions of subs and however you want to measure it. what do you think like really does beyond the kind of posting frequently and the more surface level things? What is at the heart of kind of what separates people? And I say that coming from someone who recently started a channel, early stages, at the kind of point where YouTube doesn't show videos to many people, and at the sort of the flat part of the curve.
Okay, so there's a couple different ways of thinking about this. The thing that really separates the people that, quote, succeed from the people that don't succeed, other than consistency. Consistency is honestly the main thing. There are so few YouTubers who actually consistently post every week for 2 years and don't succeed, for a start, but just people aren't consistent with it. But if we ignore consistency, because everyone knows that, I think luck plays a healthy role, obviously, but like consistency leads to more luck. Like the more videos, every time you put out a video, it's like you're buying a lottery ticket. And all it takes is for one of those to go viral, then for suddenly the channel to start blowing up. For me, it took like 80 videos for my first video to go viral. For some people, it takes like 10 videos. That kind of thing, it sort of varies. Another big factor is unfair advantages. And this comes from kind of thinking of your YouTube channel or your blog or your podcast or whatever your thing is, thinking of it less like a creator and more like a business. Because this is a business at the end of the day, right? And if you were starting a business, let's say you were trying to start a competitor to the Cambridge Union, and you were trying to, I don't know, repurpose the round church down the road and be like, right, we're going to start the new Cambridge Union Society 2.0. You would be like, all right, cool. What are the things that I have that like, what are the advantages that my business will have over the Cambridge Union? Like, why would I do this? Like, who are the competitors? What's my authentic edge? How do I stand out in this market? Et cetera, et cetera. You wouldn't just like be like, I'm going to start a competitor, or I'm going to start a competitor to crep affair and just make better creps. You would think about it a little bit harder as a business. And I think a lot of YouTubers, a lot of creatives think too much as creatives and not enough as entrepreneurs or business people. And I think one of the things that it comes down to is you've got to ask yourself two questions. Like, number one, why would anyone watch my stuff? And number two, why would anyone watch my stuff instead of the other stuff that they could be watching? And so the answer to the first question of why would anyone watch my stuff is about really understanding, again, from the world of business, your target audience, your value proposition, your niche, et cetera, and also then being able to make good videos. So if, for example, you've never made any videos, your first 100 are going to be absolutely awful, so you just have to make those first 100 to get good. And once you've gotten good, at that point, it starts to matter. And then the next question of like, why would anyone watch my stuff over someone else's is what do I bring to the space that is maybe not necessarily better than what's out there, but that's a bit different. Like, why do all of these different restaurants in Cambridge succeed? Because they all bring something different to the table rather than it's like a hierarchy of which one is better than the other. But that all comes from the foundation of like consistency and just like chucking videos out once a week and not worrying about the quality of them. And then over time, the quality improves and then all this stuff becomes relevant. So I would say that's what separates the pros from the people that give up.
How you go about balancing your interests and how do you avoid getting consumed by any specific one of those?
Balancing interests and avoiding getting consumed by any specific one of those. I think, I don't know. I think like there's very few things that I actually have. There's very few things I actually care about doing well in. One of those is like writing the book and making it a book I'm proud of. Another one of those is keeping the YouTube channel ticking along. Another one of those is kind of broadly taking care of my health. All of the other interests of like, I don't know, singing or playing guitar or piano or doing close-up magic or whatever thing I might decide to take up at a time is just like a thing that I'm doing for fun when I feel like it. And so with that kind of attitude, I never need to worry about getting consumed by something. And also, if I do get consumed by something, it's like if I suddenly decided that, oh my God, I need to learn how to play You Got a Friend in Me on the guitar, and I need to just clear my calendar for the next like 24 hours to be able to play that song, I can just do that. So like there is a level of like, when you have autonomy over your own schedule, it's a lot easier to kind of make time for stuff. But I also never need to do that because I'm just doing things that are very, again, embracing mediocrity and just doing all the things to a bad standard. I feel like unless I'm trying to do something really well, I'm unlikely to actually get consumed by it. But I don't know how helpful that would be for anyone else.
We have time, I think, for 3 more questions. So this gentleman here on the front, I think you've had your hand up for a while.
What would you say your most contrarian view is, and how has it impacted on your life?
My most contrarian view. Oh, I don't know. This comes back to that fear of getting cancelled.
Yeah, be careful.
I do think it's that thing of like, in the world of productivity, it's pretty contrarian to say that like small goals are better than big goals. And I think because most of my goals are fairly small, / non-existent, / like within my control rather than outside of it, it means I do stuff to a reasonable standard, not to a world-class standard in anything, but that's fine because life is still fun and health, wealth, love, happiness and all that. I think I do things to a reasonable standard while also having fun along the way. And I think if more people set smaller goals that were in their control rather than big goals that are outside of their control, more people's lives would be more fun, I think. Yeah.
Perfect. So I'll just ask, how do you know when something becomes a sunk cost and you have to give up on that consistency? Like, for example, when you did 80 of your videos, how did you know that it will lead to that great hit?
Good question. So for anyone who didn't hear, how did I do 80 videos without knowing when it would lead to the great hit, and sort of abstract that a little bit? I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I feel like it comes down to the goal thing. Like, I was not thinking in my mind that that video needs to be a great hit. I was like, maybe I'm going to hope for the best. I'm going to kind of do what I can to line up the T's and to kind of do the things that are under my control to get, this video to become a banger. And if it didn't become a banger, whatevs, just move on to the next one. I think there is some level of knowing what that point is, that you've tried something for long enough, that things are not working and you need to change things up. The nice thing with a YouTube channel is that you get the feedback loops are very quick. You publish a video and immediately, within a day or two, you'll get at least some views. You'll get at least some subscribers. And I remember back in the day, in my final year, I would refresh my YouTube app multiple times a day. I'm like, yes, I've got 47 subscribers now. Oh my God, I had 45 yesterday. That kind of stuff. And there's a good book about this, actually. Jeff Hayden, The Motivation Myth, about how motivation is a thing that you take action and then you get small successes, and then that fuels motivation to continue to take more action. And I think if you can shorten the feedback loops for the thing, and again, a YouTube channel makes it super easy because the feedback loop is literally built into the system. When you start seeing traction, you kind of get an idea that oh, okay, this is resonating with people. There are some people out there, potentially there's 3 or 4 people that have seen this video and that have commented saying that this was really helpful to help me with my Cambridge Medicine interview. That's enough positive feedback that it's okay, cool, I think there's something here. I'm going to continue to do my thing of one video every week for the next 2 years. And then at that point, I will reassess and decide, do I really want to do this thing? And a lot of the YouTubers I know who have become kind of successful made that commitment to themselves of I know I'm going to make 2 videos a week for the next 4 years, and that is a decision I'm going to take right now, and I'm not going to reassess this until 4 years from now. And I think there is something in a way, the more you sample, the more you reassess and constantly ask yourself, am I really doing this for the right reasons? Why am I doing this, et cetera, that can actually become debilitating. So I think some level of just committing to a thing for a certain period of time and not thinking too hard about it and just trying to enjoy the journey and set goals that are in your control is the way forward. But it's very industry specific. It kind of depends on a bunch of different factors as to at what point you should call it quits versus keep going with something.
I thought we've got the last question. So, I'm going to go here.
Thank you. So thank you for your talk. My question is, so you talk about sort of in the future wanting to work 3 or 4 days a week. What do you do with the rest of your time? And how do you sort of balance between sort of productive downtime and sort of just scrolling through Instagram or whatever else you do?
Yeah. So there is an author called Ryan Holiday, who some of you might be familiar with. He's written books about stoicism and stuff. He has what I consider to be a pretty sick daily routine. He lives on some random farm outside of Austin, Texas. He wakes up at 8. From 9 a.m. till 1 p.m., he goes to his little attic where he's got his little library and he does reading and writing and he writes a book every 2 years. And then from 1 p.m. onwards, he's just hanging out with his kids and taking his kids to school and going for a walk and maybe reading a book because he feels like reading a book and going for a workout and playing tennis and stuff. That seems like a pretty cool life. I was reading an essay yesterday by Bertrand Russell called In Praise of Idleness, which is really good, highlighted basically every paragraph in it. So he wrote it in 1950 or something. But this was an essay that was basically talking about how we in the modern world in 1950 have started to care about work too much, and that we've sort of fallen prey to this mass delusion that hard work is a virtue, and that you should work to earn your keep, et cetera, et cetera. but actually we could all probably work for 4 hours a day and make enough money to get by, like produce enough so that we're not consuming more than we produce from the planet. And then the rest of that time we can spend in idleness or in leisure. And like back in the day, I think Aristotle said this, he was like, once a man doesn't have to work, it was always a man, but like once a man doesn't have to work, then they should spend their time in like leisure and contemplation. I feel like, once I get to that point where I've got my 4-hour workday, maybe working 3 or 4 days a week, I spend the rest of that time just learning how to enjoy life, because in a way, the point of life is not necessarily to work, but like work is there to function as like, the thing that serves the rest of life. And so this is actually quite a hard thing for people to do. So like one interesting thing that I've been reading about in research for my book is people who are like high achievers all the time. So if you look at like investment bankers and stuff, people who work really, really hard to make loads and loads of money, and then they make enough money that they could retire, they tend not to retire. They tend to just keep on doing the thing and keep on going on the hamster wheel because they don't know what a life outside of work looks like. And they get, post-retirement, when people don't have work to do, risk of a heart attack increases like by stupid numbers. And I guess what Bertrand Russell would say, what Ryan Holiday would say, and what I'm trying to get to is where we can live a life where like work is sort of integrated into that, but we're also enjoying ourselves in our leisure and not worrying so much about productivity or about work, because that's not the point. So I don't know. I still work quite a lot these days. It feels weird to call it work because it doesn't really feel like work because I'm doing stuff that I would be doing anyway, even if I wasn't paid for it. But that's one thing I'm trying to get better at, of like actively enjoying leisure a little bit more, so that when I get to that point of a 4-hour workday, I have stuff to do rather than being like, oh crap, I have 8 hours in my day and I don't know how to spend them, kind of vibe. Yeah, that's a dream.
Lovely note to end on. Ali, thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
And yeah, if we could just give him a round of applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ooh.